Today we're going to be making hot cross buns. Don't worry, they're not difficult at all. They take a little bit of time, but most of that is just leaving it to sit on its side on the counter, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So let's give it a try. In your kit, we've given you your flour. You need to put that into a bowl. I'm going to use a mixer because I'm lazy, but you can very easily do this by hand. So into our big bowl, we want to put our flour. We're going to add our yeast. Just going to put the whole sachet of yeast in here. It's about 7 grams. Next, we'll add our salt. Try and put that on the other side of the bowl to the yeast because sometimes those two get together and they cause trouble. So yeast and salt away from each other. Tip in your spices. We've got mixed spice and we've got cinnamon. Already smelling of Easter. And finally our caster sugar. We're going to mix that together first just to mingle all those ingredients together, and then we'll start adding in our wet ingredients. So I'm using a dough hook. Like I said, if you've got a food processor, a mixer, or just using by hand, all of those work absolutely fine as well. So give that a good mix around until it's starting to look like it's vaguely the same colour, it's a bit more uniform. When you've done that, add in your milk, slowly pour it in so you don't get splattered. You can hear the mix is starting to change its tune. It's slowing itself down, it's having to work a little bit harder. And we're going to let that mix for about 3 minutes until it all starts to come together. Once that's started to come together in a bit of a ball, we're going to add in our melted butter and our sultanas. I should have mentioned that when you add your milk, you want that to be warm. So either warm that up on the hob for a couple of minutes. You don't want it to be boiling hot, you just want it to be warm. Too hot and it scalds the yeast and it gets upset. Not warm enough, it doesn't activate the yeast and it gets upset. Yeast is quite a fussy little fellow. So warm your milk before you put it in. Now I'm going to add in my sultanas. And the butter, that's 50 grams of butter and it's melted. And then I'm going to stand back because my mixer likes to make a bit of a mess sometimes. Once you've added your butter and your sultanas, you're going to want to let the mixer knead that dough for about 5 minutes. If you're doing it by hand, you're going to need to allow 10 minutes for that. So really get into it, get really stretching and pulling the dough around. That's stretching out those gluten fibres and going to make it feel really fluffy and delicious. So the old mixer's been mixing and mixing, and you can see now this dough is really smooth. It's really elasticy, and it's ready to rest. But I'm just going to give you a little bit of a demonstration on how you might want to hand knead it if you were doing this by hand. So what I tend to do is I push down with the heel of my hand, this part here, and I'm pushing it away from me, and then I'm folding it back. Pushing it away and folding it back. And you just keep flipping it around and doing that. Feels really nice, it's really relaxing. So knead and pull until you've got a lovely smooth ball of dough. The recipes will tell you to put them in a clean bowl. I am super lazy when it comes to cooking and I don't want to make any more mess than I need to. So I've never found that having a clean bowl makes any difference. So I just chuck it back in the bowl that I mixed it in. But if we're going to do things properly, you'll put it in a clean bowl. Sometimes it's good not to do things properly. We're going to leave it now for about an hour until it's doubled in size. It's a really sunny day today, so I'm going to cover mine with a damp cloth. You can use a piece of cling film if you use that, or just a damp tea towel or whatever, and leave it somewhere warm to double in size. Whilst our dough's proving, we're going to make our mixture that we'll pipe on top of our buns. That might be a cross, you might want to pipe your initials, a big heart, whatever, but we're going to use this mixture to do it. So we've got 75 grams of plain flour, and to that we're going to add 5 tablespoons of water. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're going to mix that up to a smooth paste. So that becomes a kind of still fairly soft dough. You can pop that in the piping bag that we gave you, and that'll be ready for when we're finishing our buns off later. So we're going to have a quick look at our dough. I don't think it's quite there yet. It's got bigger, and I poke it and it rises back a little bit, but it's not totally springy yet. So I think it needs a little bit longer. So I'm gonna cover it back up and keep it in that warm place. I've been researching hot cross buns for you, so I thought I'd give you some hot cross bun facts. And from what I can read, hot cross buns have been around for centuries. They've been through many iterations, much like the Christmas pudding. It's gone from a sort of quite savoury flavour to the sweet version that we know now. The hot cross bun as we know it was made by a monk in St Albans in the 14th century, and he made it and gave it out to people in his community on Good Friday. Queen Elizabeth I banned hot cross buns from being eaten at any time other than Easter and on birthdays. So people went and made hot cross buns on the lowdown. They made them at home and they shared them at home, and they used to hang them up from the rafters, and they believed that they had magical powers because they'd stay hanging from the rafters and they wouldn't rot. They'd still be edible, so people would have little nibbles and think it would give them sort of magical energy and also protect them and keep them safe. Probably the reason that the hot cross buns didn't go mouldy is because there's sugar in them, and sugar acts as a preservative. But you know, back in the day we didn't know things like that, so they thought it was magic. And the nicest fact that I read about hot cross buns is that there's a tradition in Ireland where they used to have a hot cross bun on Good Friday with their best friend, and you'd have to recite the lines, half for you, half for me, between the two of us, good luck shall be. Which I think is really cute. So maybe you can share your hot cross buns with a friend. There we go. Look how big and puffy it is. That's had about an hour and a half to rise. And it's definitely there now. You can see how springy it is. It bounces back. And now we're going to degas it. My favourite way of degassing it is just to punch it. So I'm going to get all the air out. So, boop. And you can see it's deflating. We're going to take it out now, and we're going to cut it into 12 individual pieces and roll them up into little buns. So we're going to cut this into 12 individual portions. I like to be quite precise with mine, so I weigh them out, and it's 117 grams per bun. So we've measured out our balls, they're all the same size, and now we're going to make them into nice smooth little buns. So what I tend to do is just start folding them in on each other. You can see that I'm pulling the outside into the centre and kind of sticking it down. You can pop some flour on your work surface to help this out. But you do that a few times, roll it around, and you've got a really nice smooth bun shape. So do that for all of them. Place them on a baking tray about 3 inches apart because they're going to need room to rise again. We've got 9 buns here and another 3 on another tray. They need to rise again. Need to prove them a second time. My method of proving is to put my oven on its lowest setting. I put a pan of hot water in the bottom of the oven and leave the oven on for about 5 minutes. Let it get really steamy and hot. So that's the buns rolled out in nice smooth little balls, ready to go and have another prove. I tend to prove by turning my oven onto the lowest setting, popping a bowl of boiling water in there and letting it get really steamy. After about 5 minutes, turn the oven off and you can use that as your proofing rack. So I put them in there and just leave them alone until they've doubled in size. Another way of doing that would be to put them inside a plastic bag or just wrap them very loosely with cling film. Either way, you want to leave them for probably between half an hour to 2 hours, depending on the environment, until they're doubled in size, and then they'll be going in the oven. So look at these beauts. Well risen, they're ready for their crosses. I'm going to cut the tip off this piping bag and you can pipe your crosses over. If you've got a smaller tray, you can do this so that they're sort of touching each other. I didn't do that. There we go. So we're going to pipe all these crosses and we're going to put them in the oven at 180 for about 18 to 22 minutes until they're just golden brown. So these little beauts are ready for their hot crosses. Cut the tip off the piping bag. Remember, this was the plain flour, 75 grams, and 5 tablespoons of water mixture that we're going to pipe on top. You wait until it's proved, otherwise they'd kind of sink in and go a little bit weird. And once we've piped these crosses, these can go into the oven at 180 and they're going to cook for about 18 to 22 minutes until they're golden brown. So these guys have had 15 minutes in the oven. You can see they're golden brown. It's going to depend on your oven temperature. But look, they're all golden brown and risen and looking beautiful. So the last thing we need to do is glaze them. I've got the marmalade that we put in your kits. I've warmed that in the microwave for about 20 seconds. And then you're just going to take a pastry brush and wash that over your hot cross buns. Look at them. So pretty. And that's it. Give them all a good sticky coating, let them cool, and snaffle them whichever way you like. I like to toast mine and then layer on loads of butter. How do you eat yours? Let us know how you get on. Take some photos and send them over to us. I'd love to see your hot cross buns, and enjoy.